Hi everyone, this is Ixwa. This is the start to my modding video guide. There's a lot of currently existing guides, most notably Lap's Guide and Proto's Guide. Uh, Lap's Guide unfortunately covers Reassembly Web Development Kit, which used to be really good for making mods, but unfortunately is extremely outdated nowadays, so we're gonna go ahead and close that. And Proto's Guide is really nice. If you ever need a reference, I recommend checking this out. And if you have time and the attention span to read through the whole thing, because it's long, but it's also full of really, really good information. So, with that said, let's get right into it. Before you actually are able to create anything in Reassembly, you're going to need some sort of text editor. It really can be whatever you want it to be. You could even use Notepad, like the default Windows application, if you are a masochist and hate yourself. But the generally accepted software that everyone uses, at least to my knowledge, is Notepad++. It's nice. It's got little colors for when you write stuff. You can kind of see in this image here. And if you just look up Notepad++, it's the first download. You can just get the newest version. Hit download, and it just pops up with this installer that you will double click when this opens. Yeah, here we go. You can double click this and it will take you through installation. I've already got Notepad++ linked over here, so when you first open this, yours is going to look a bit different than mine because I've changed the colors. But this is what Notepad++ looks like. Now, the last thing you're going to be missing before you're able to actually make a mod is you're going to need to open your C drive. So you open up File Explorer. Here we go. You go to C, Users, Your Name, and then Saved Games, Reassembly. And in here, I have got a mods folder. You are not going to have that, most likely, unless you've already made mods before, in which case you have it. But if you don't have it, just right-click, New Folder, and then call it Mods. And this is where all of your mods are gonna go. This is just for local mods, so this isn't where Steam mods show up. Those are in a different place. But in terms of local mods, this is where they're gonna be. So just as a quick example, there's a mod I've been working on. Here you've got your blocks, Lua, factions, regions, shapes, and then the rest of the stuff is, I guess, filler. This is a more complicated mod. Our folder probably isn't going to end up looking like this, but this is just what a general mod looks like. So we're actually going to go in here, hit New Folder, and let's call our mod Game Jam. You can put a space in here if you want. As you can see, there's space in here. I'm just not doing it because I don't know. And this is where you're going to save all of your mod information. So remember this path. It was C, Users, Your Name, Saved Games, Reassembly, and then Mods. Now to get down to actually making your first ever blocks in Reassembly. The first thing when you open up Notepad++, this is, again, I mentioned it before, this is a text document. It's not the type of thing that Reassembly uses as its main kind of thing. So what we're going to do right away is just File, Save As, and then we're going to go into, again, C, Users, My Name, Saved Games, Reassembly, Mods, scroll down to our mod. I called mine Game Jam, you can call it whatever, and save this as blocks.lua. And here you're gonna have to hit this drop down, and there's a lot of stuff that Notepad++ supports, but you're just gonna find this tab right here where it says Lua, hit that, and click Save. And now when I type things, it still looks dark, but like, let's say I will write a comment. Now it's in blue, right? So numbers are pink for me. Obviously your colors are going to be a bit different, and you can just do a quick Google search on how you can change the defaults. It's pretty easy to do. And the final thing we're going to do is just put an opening bracket and a closing bracket. This is where all of our blocks are going to go. So with that said, let's just throw together a simple core block to start off our faction. The very first thing you're going to want to do when you're making your blocks is to put an opening bracket. That defines the start of a block, and then after that, you're going to want to put your block information. So first things first, you want to put your ID. Relocation range, or the numbers you should generally keep your IDs within, is 17,000 to 26,000. And what that relocation range is the game will go in, see that number, and actually move it to a different number when it's on the Steam Workshop, so that mods don't conflict with each other, which is super nice, especially when you have a lot of mods installed on your computer. You can use numbers higher than that or lower than that. The problem is they might not relocate, or they might conflict with something. And then you've got problems where you're making blocks and you're replacing vanilla blocks with those, or you're making blocks and another mod which also happens to use that and isn't getting relocated. You're going to start conflicting with those mods. So for IDs, it's generally safer to just stay within that value of 17,000 to 26,000. I'm going to put my core at 19,999, and that is my core ID. So that is what the computer will call the core. After that, you put your group. And your group ID, or your group, is the most important number in the entire faction. This is going to show up in almost all of the other files that we make. And what this does is it tells the computer that this is from a specific faction. So for example, Terran is group 8. If you ever type in like Fleet Palette 8 or Mini Palette 8, or sometimes you just hear people say Faction 8, that is Terran's group number, and all of the Terran blocks are under group 8. So we're going to call ours group 20. Again, yours can be completely different or the same, it doesn't really matter. I'm using group 20 because I'm going to be using 20,000 IDs later on. I'm going to be making my IDs higher than this, so 20,000. And I think it's just easier to see group 20. Oh yeah, that's faction with IDs 20,000. Next thing you're going to want to make is your name. Actually, this doesn't have to be in any specific order. This is the generally accepted way to do it, but if you put something in a different order, it literally doesn't matter. The game will read it the same way. So just an example for that, I'm going to put my blurb first and then my name. So our blurb is going to be equal to, and then if you're curious as to where I'm grabbing these values from, it's all in Proto's guide, and because I have most of these memorized because I've written a few mods now. But blurb is just blurb equals, and then quotation mark, and then you just put your blurb in here, so core of ship, and then quotation mark. Now, let's say you want to have a quotation mark inside of here, and then you want to say some more text and finish it. Now you have a problem because it is black and this is green. This is the code's way of telling you, wait a second, our string ended here and you're still writing stuff and we don't know what this is, so we're going to make it black. It's going to be a different color. If you want to have a quotation mark in here, you're going to put a slash character in front of it, and now the whole thing is green. And if you look at this in Reassembly, it's not going to have that slash in here, but it is going to have the quote in there. Couple more things you can do is put /n and /t. And I'm going to leave these in for now, just for you to see them, but the /n is a new line or enter, and the /t is a tab or an indent. After now, I'm going to put my name equals, and same thing, open, call it just core, or if I can type core or whatever you want it to be, close quotation mark. And then next thing you want is your shape, so shape equals, and again I would check out Proto's guide and go all the way down to references. It will tell you what the shapes that you can use for vanilla are. I'm just going to make my core a square because I like squares, and with scale equals to 1. Now this vanilla square can scale between 1 and 10. A scale 1 square is just your regular 1 by 1 Terran block, so that's a normal shape for a core. That's what I'm going to stick with, for now at least. And actually, this information is technically enough for a block to be complete. Obviously, I would have to put a closing bracket, otherwise it's going to give me an error. But this is a finished block in Reassembly. This is all you need to put, and Reassembly will actually fill in the rest of the values with filler values for you. Is that a good idea? No, because the filler values are usually bad, and the more specific you are, the better it is. So we're going to quickly just fill in the rest of the values. You want a durability, and let's just set that to 2.5, and a density, and set that to 0.1. This is a generic durability and density value. It's similar to what Terran has. The best way you can get a feel for this is to play around with it by yourself, but this is a linear scale. So like a 5 durability is going to be twice as durable as a 2.5. After that, you want your points. Because this is a core, I'm just going to set it equal to 10. If you want it to be equal to 0, use -1. If you use 0, that's just saying, go ahead and make this whatever you want it to be. So most blocks will end up being 0 just by virtue of durability isn't that high. But like if I set this durability to 25 and this points to 0, it would give it some amount of points. So I'll set this to 10 for now, to 2.5. Next thing you want is a grow rate. You might be thinking, wait a second, your core doesn't grow, but it actually does when you come out of a factory. So this is going to dictate how fast ships come out of factories. 10 is kind of a normal value. Again, it's easiest to just play around with this and figure out what you like the most. And I've already made a mistake here. Grow rate, the R is capitalized. So whenever you're typing 2 words or more than 2 words, more than 1 word, I guess, you're going to want to capitalize any word that comes after the first one. So this is lowercase, this is uppercase, and if this was a long thing, this doesn't exist in Reassembly, but let's just say grow rate of core. This O and this C would also be capitalized. So just remember, capitalization matters. If I put this as a lowercase r and open this in Reassembly, it would actually throw an error and my block probably wouldn't show up. And then finally, we're going to want to add color to our block. So fill color equals fill color 1 equals and fill color, or sorry, line color equals. And then you close your bracket. Now, this is still wrong. You're going to want to put in actual colors for this. So I'm just going to make this oscillate between red and green, but a general gist of this is the first color of the block, this is the second color of the block, and this is what the outline of the block is. If you want the color to just be one color and to not change between 2, you can set fill color and fill color 1 to the same thing. I want it to switch between red and green for now, just to show off how that kind of works. So I'm going to set this to 0x. 0x is important. This goes in front of every color. And then the hex color for red is FF0000. So here's your color, and this is the 0x that goes in front of the color. Again, 0x, and because I want this to be green, I'm going to put 00FF00, and this is my green, and this is my indicator that it's a color. And finally, for line color, again, 0x, and let's just say I want my line color to be black. You can put 000000, or you can put 010101. Doesn't really matter. I generally use 010101 because it looks nicer in guns for whatever reason, and it doesn't really make that much of a difference in blocks, so uniformity is good. I just use 010101 for everything. If you can, I'd use that too. Sometimes 00000 has its application, but generally I just use this for everything. Actually, if we were to open Reassembly right now, actually save this first, but if we were to open Reassembly right now, this would show up in the game. And save is just Control S, or you can do File Save. Now, you might be thinking, wow, it's been like 5 minutes or maybe even more, and I only made one block. I would be better off making this in a Reassembly web development kit. I would have made 2 blocks in this time. But the bonus of using Notepad++ is that you can copy and paste. And I'm going to be using that a lot more extensively as we go on in this kind of series or maybe video. So if I just copy this, put it here, and change the ID to 2000, now this is our core block, and this is another block, which, I mean, none of these are cores yet. I still have to add functionality. This is just a regular block to kind of show what a regular block looks like. But let's say I want this one to just be red. So I would call this FF00. And now when we load up Reassembly, we're going to have 2 blocks. And this one is going to be red and green, and it's going to switch between those two, and this one's just going to be red. And if I wanted to, I could add 50 more blocks. So as long as I remember to change this ID later on, this is a bit too long, I will now have 6 blocks, no, actually 7 blocks that's going to show up in the editor. Now, most of these are going to be the same, so I'm just going to delete these ones because these are duplicates, and that's not how you do it, and I'm going to show a better way of doing it later. But now we can open this up in Reassembly and look at what our mod looks like if we save it first. Alright, so we are in Reassembly right now, and before I actually show you what blocks we just made, I'm going to show you where they kind of are. So when you first make a mod, it's going to be all the way at the bottom of your mod list. You can drag this around. I'm going to keep it here because I don't want to restart Reassembly right now, and because it doesn't have errors. It's not interfering with anything. So I'm going to leave it here. If you have a lot of local mods installed, you might have one with the same ID, so you might have to drag it up or uninstall that other mod to make yours easier. But I don't have any local mods installed with that ID, so I can go into Sandbox now and show off my mod. Now, your mod with what you've made so far isn't going to show up in Campaign. So best way to show it in, or best way to look at what you've made so far is in Sandbox. I've already typed the command. You go up here, I typed CL or clear, and that will clear the entire arena. Next thing you want to do is remember your group ID from earlier, and then type in pal, or if you want palette, but pal is just faster, and then your palette number or your group ID. So I remember mine was 20. I hit enter. When you look at that, here are 2 blocks. Now the first one is 19999, and this is the one that I told you would oscillate between green and red. And this one's 2000, and this one's just a flat red. So already you can see we've made 2 blocks in a relatively quick time. And actually we could have made 7, but I deleted the duplicates of this. Editor in Sandbox is the same as editor in default mode. You can still copy paste stuff. It's just regular Reassembly editor, only that there's some more things you can do. The 3 important hotkeys are 1, 2, and 3 on your numbers. So 3 is build mode, which is what we're in right now. If you hit 2, all of these lines are going to go away, and this is kind of view mode. So I can't actually select anything because it doesn't have a core in it. If it did have a core in it and I hovered over the core, it would actually select the entire ship. And then 1 is play mode. So let me spawn in a ship right now to show this off better. But we are in edit mode. So I hit 3, we are in edit mode. I hit 2, we are in view mode. And if I select this ship, it will select the ship. It will tell me information about the ship. And if I hit 1, I'm in play mode. Actually, it's a bit hard to tell with this one because it doesn't have thrusters. But I hit 1, I'm in play mode. And again, it's just default Reassembly controls. I can change my keyboard rotation. I can change my auto aim in here if you remember the hotkeys for how to do that. And I can go back into edit mode by hitting 3, back into view mode by hitting 2, etc. Now we're going to actually come back to this core block and finish it up. Also, you might notice that in our blurb right now, it is showing the slashes. Do know that that won't show up in the actual game. So just as a quick example, here's a faction I'm working on right now. And you can see in this blurb, which is really long, I have a lot of new line characters. I'm going to outline them right now in the video so you can see. But when we go into our actual game and load up this faction now and go into upgrade menu, you're going to see that it actually gives the new line and it doesn't show any of those weird characters. So yeah. Alright, we are back in the text editor. A couple things I've done just out of the camera. I've changed name and blurb back to where it makes more sense. I've removed the blurb here. You actually don't need it. It's just not going to show up. If you want to have a blurb for your hull, you can. I'm probably going to add one later when I come up with some more creative ideas. For now, I've just removed it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add features. So this is where you start getting into what cores actually do. First thing we're going to do is just put an indent somewhere. You can put this after group, you can put this anywhere really. I'm just going to put it after blurb. Features equals, and then all of your features are going to be existing features in all caps. I think these are referenced in Proto's guide, again at the very bottom of references, but for now we just want command and assembler. So what this one does is it says that this is the command of a ship, it's a core of a ship, and this one is what lets ships assemble. This is the only flag to do it. There's another one that's similar, which doesn't work, unfortunately. So this is what you're going to want to put on all of your ships. If you don't put this on your ship and it gets shot at, it's not going to be able to rebuild. And actually, when you first spawn in and add stuff to your ship, you're not going to be able to rebuild. And when stuff gets made out of factories, it's not going to be able to rebuild. This is a very important flag to have. Next thing, just here again, I'm going to put a feature. Actually, this would be features, sorry, with an S. And here I'm going to put palette. And this one, palette just makes something appear in the upgrade screen. If you put it on a ship, it will also appear in the upgrade screen. But if you just put features equals palette on every block, you never have to worry about things maybe not showing up in the vanilla palette. So it's just a lot easier to do this right away and save yourself some headache. Another thing you might want to do is int lines. And this is what you see in some factions where if you connect blocks and then go into view mode, they're actually going to have edges around them. So depending on if you want them or not, put those in. I'm going to leave that in for now just to show the difference between how it looked before and how it's going to look now. And then last thing you want is maybe some additional quality of life stuff. So let's put torque generator and photosynth and maybe tractor on this command. And notice that I'm separating all of these with the vertical bar. That's not an L, that's not an I, that's not a 1, that's a vertical bar, so make sure you're getting that vertical bar in there. Tractor is what it says, it's a resource tractor, so whenever resources come within a certain amount, you're gonna have to, or they're gonna come towards the core. Photosynth generates R per second. Generator is obviously generates power for your ship, and torquer is obviously a torquer. And there's gonna be more features that we talk about later, so like thruster or whatever. And if you want to have those on your core, they're also an option. I'm only going to go over these for now because they're a lot more simple. But for these specific ones, you're going to want to have some flags for them or some information. So let's start with torquer. You're going to want a flag called torquer torque. And this is going to be set to something. The weird thing about torque and thrust is that the values for them are absurdly high. So in order to rotate this well, I'm probably going to want a torque of like 10,000. This might rotate very quickly. It's probably not going to. Next thing we want is generator flags. So generator capacity per sec is how fast it generates. So this generator or this core will generate 100 power per second, and then power capacity is the maximum amount it can store. So let's set that to 300. This is all up to whatever you want to set it to. But yeah. Next up is photosynth. This is just photosynth per sec. And you're going to want to set this to whatever you want. I'm going to set it to 0.5 because that's like a good starting value. But if you want it to be more, if you want it to be less, you can set it. Or you can just not have photosynth at all. And finally, tractor is just tractor range. And then let's set that to 600. So this is a reassembly unit. 600 is not 600 blocks, it's 600 reassembly units. And this means when you think of a 1x1 Terran block, that's actually 10 reassembly units by 10 reassembly units. So reassembly's got this little kind of scale thing within it. And this is going to be 60 1x1 Terran blocks long. And this is like a radius from the outside of the, or from the inside of the core. So now our core block is done. And before we open this up again in Reassembly, I want to show you another quality of life feature to make blocks really, really, really fast. And this is really like where Notepad++ begins to shine above anything else you might be, not Notepad++, but like this is where manually coding it begins to shine above Reassembly Web Development Kit by a lot. We're going to start using the extends feature. So first thing, you make your opening brackets for a block, and the next thing is you put your ID. So I'm going to use 20,001. Make sure your IDs are different. If it's the same ID, it's going to try to define the block twice. So if I put 20,000 here, it's going to read through this and set this to 20,000. It's going to set this to 20,000, and this is going to overwrite this, and you're going to get an error, and it's not going to be fun. So make sure those are different. And then the rest of the syntax is really simple. Extends equals, and then the block you're extending off of. And this is technically enough. This is just going to spawn the same block as this with all of these values. And if you want, you can add extra information to this. So if I put scale equals 2, it's going to copy paste this entire block and replace this scale equals 1 with scale equals 2. So this way, we can just go ahead and make a bunch of blocks this way. And part of the really neat thing with this is that if I want to now, actually, let's fix these first, these IDs first. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to have 9 scales of 10 blocks. Now, if I want to copy this really quickly, I can actually just copy this entire block, put it here, start this off with the 10, and then if you press Alt hotkey, you can select columns. So Alt, and then you can select multiple things, and just replace all of these zeros with 1, because this is now 110. And you might have noticed that I skipped an ID. That's totally fine. Actually, it's good practice to save a lot more space than this, and I'm gonna go back and fix this later. But yeah, these are all extended off of this block now. And let's say I make this block green and not have int lines. Now, in the span of literally not even like a minute, we've created 17 more blocks based off of this one. And that's just because we can copy paste in here, and in Notepad in Reassembly Web Development Kit, you could probably do this quickly, but not nearly as quickly as I did it. And I could have probably even shortened this down significantly faster if I wasn't explaining it right now. So let's save this, Control S, and open up Reassembly and see our new blocks. So again, in Reassembly, we don't have any sort of factions region set up, so we're going to go back into Sandbox, and we're going to be spending a lot of time in here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put clear or CL, and then PAL 20, or whatever your thing is. And would you look at that, all of our blocks are showing up. We've got our red blocks and we've got our green blocks. In your case, you're wondering what int lines look like versus what not int lines looks like. If you go into editor mode, this one doesn't have lines and this one does. So this was int lines and this had just palette. Now, for bigger factions with more shapes, especially ones like antecedents, if I just type PAL 29, that's gonna come up with a lot of blocks. And most likely your first mod isn't going to have like 50 scales of triangles in 4 different colors, and then also Chad lines. So you might be good off using PAL, but it's generally a good idea to start using min PAL, or just min P 20. And this only spawns 3 blocks, but remember, this block, this 20,000, has 9 more blocks contained in it. So you can scroll through them just as you can with here. And same thing for this one. You can scroll through this one, and it's a lot easier to access your blocks. This way it takes up a lot less space. Now we're actually going to keep Reassembly open, and if we tab into Notepad++, I can give a quick example of, let's say we want to change this to a blue color now. So actually, let's make this oscillate between blue and green. So we changed this fill color now. We hit Control S, we save, we hop back into Reassembly. These blocks look the same, but when we write reload or just rel in the command line here with these blocks selected, now they're gonna start oscillating. And it's a bit weird because they decided to start oscillating at random times. So I'm just gonna clear min palette, my faction again. And you can see I've updated this block. I didn't close Reassembly. Reassembly's been open this entire time, and I can just change something in the code directly and edit it. So just as another example, we can go back into here, we can copy this, we can paste another one of these, we can change this to 20, we can change this to 20 and this to 20, and we can make this, I don't know, we can just make this white. And now if we go into Reassembly again, what's going to happen is we hit reload, and then we do min palette 20, or I guess just pal 20. And would you look at that? Now we've got our blue-green blocks, we've got our red blocks with int lines, right? And we've got our white blocks without int lines. And I just added another 9 blocks into the code with literally 5 seconds. So now hopefully you have enough information to get started with a basic a basic block palette. I will be talking a bit more about shapes in the next section of this video, and a bit more, or in the next video, I guess, because this one feels like it's getting long already. And I'll be talking a bit more about custom shapes, a bit more about some more utility blocks, and maybe if we have a bit of time, I'll actually update these into something that will work for the modding jam and not just this kind of an ugly fleet palette right now.